What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. I'm going to continue to examine 100 years of World Championship fights. January 12, 1944. Smoking Joe Frazier was born in Beaufort, South Carolina. He would become the WBC heavyweight champion of the world when he knocked out Buster Mathis Sr. with a beautiful left hook. Now, that fight was outside of a tournament. The belts were split up and divided when Muhammad Ali was stripped of his crown. And he would develop a tournament. Jimmy Ellis would defeat Jerry Quarry. He would hold the WBA heavyweight championship belt. Now Joe Frazier would defeat Buster Mathis Sr. and he would become the WBC heavyweight champion. So he would get it on with Jimmy Ellis, two separate occasions. Beautiful knockout, Madison Square Garden. He would get it on with Jerry Quarry twice. Great fights those two men would have. He would face George Foreman twice. He would lose his WBC heavyweight championship belt to George Foreman, Kingston, Jamaica. He'd get it on Muhammad Ali three times. March 8th, 1971. One of the greatest heavyweight championship bouts. Along with 1975. That fight was the Thriller of Manila. That was probably one of the most vicious heavyweight championship bouts. But none of that would happen if Joe Frazier wouldn't defeat Oscar Bonavena in his 11th professional fight. He was down twice, Madison Square Garden. And had he went down one more time, that March 8th, 1971 fight would never take place. And we'll get to the 1960s and 1970s, and we'll talk about Joe Frazier and Ali and all the other great heavyweights during that era. But that was something else between Joe Frazier, Ali, Jimmy Ellis, Jerry Quarry, Bonavena. Now, January 25th, 1944, Bob Montgomery knocks out Ike Williams in 12 rounds in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My dad was at that fight and he told me that was one of the greatest fights he attended. And he attended hundreds of fights, such as myself. He's seen them all. But the thing with Ike Williams was never be recognized as any kind of a champion in Philadelphia because Bob Montgomery was the champion. And they fought each other several times, and that was a war. My dad talked about that fight all the time. And he told me that fight really showed him the essence of what the game was really about. And Ike Williams would be stopped in the 12th round after putting up a gallant effort over Bob Montgomery. And when Ike Williams was stopped in the 12th round, until he was completely counted out, you couldn't hear a pin drop in that arena. But once it was official that Bob Montgomery had defeated Ike Williams, the place exploded. And my dad always reminded me of what it was like to see a fight like that. That was some fight. Ike Williams would go on and face other great fighters. He would wind up becoming the lightweight champion of the world when he defeated Juan Zorrilla, Mexico City, 2 rounds for the NBA portion of that lightweight division. But we'll talk more about Ike Williams as we get closer to the highlights of his career. He turned professional in 1940, along with Ray Robinson and Charley Burley, and Jimmy Bivens, and Willie Pep. There's a Charles. Great fighters I'm mentioning here. February 18th, 1944, Bob Montgomery defeats Al Bummy Davis. 1 round. He was dropped in the first round himself. He gets up and knocks out Al Bummy Davis. New York's Madison Square Garden. That was something else. Because Al Bummy Davis was a numbers runner for the mob. My grandfather knew him because he ran the numbers himself. He told me a lot about Al Bummy Davis. Who was Al Bummy Davis? His name was Albert Abraham Davidoff. He was born January 26, 1920 in Brooklyn, New York. He died November 21st, 1945 in Brooklyn, New York. He stood 5 foot 6 inches. He had a 67-inch reach. He had a record of 79 total bouts, 65 wins, 10 losses, 46 knockouts, and he was stopped 3 times himself. Fought from 1937 to 1945. Al Bundy Davis, from my understanding, was something else. Can't make this stuff up. Boxing is something else. March 3rd, 1944, Bob Montgomery defeats Bojack 15 rounds in New York, Madison Square Garden, to regain his recognition of the World Lightweight Championship belt. March 8th, 1944, Mexico City's Juan Zarita defeats Sammy Gott 15 rounds in Hollywood, California, to win the NBA Lightweight Championship crown. The fight took place at Gilmore Field Stadium. And Juan Zarita was 26 years old. He stood 5 foot 5 inches. He had a 66-inch reach. He had a record of 124 wins, 21 losses, 1 draw, and 42 knockouts. As for Sammy Gott, he was 29 years old. He stood 5 foot 7.5 inches and had a 70-inch reach. He had a record of 73 wins, 18 losses, 6 draws, and 12 knockouts. Now, between March 19, 1943 and January 28, 1944, Gott would stop Willie Pep's 62-0 winning streak. He would lose to Armstrong and defeat Luther Slugger White. And he couldn't get past Bojack. Beautiful bolo punch that would be thrown in that fight. Elmer Valiant Ray would be on the undercard, and he would win his fight. March 10th, 1944, Sal Barlito defeats Phil Terranova 15 rounds, Boston, Connecticut, to win the NBA Featherweight Championship crown. Manuel Ortiz defends his title in the bantamweight division 4 times in 1944. Ernesto Aguilar, 15 rounds, Los Angeles, California. Tony Oliveira, 15 rounds, Los Angeles, California. He fought Luis Castillo twice. 4-round Los Angeles, California, in the 9th round. Beautiful knockout that was. Los Angeles, California, to retain his bantamweight championship crown. Now we're looking at Charley Burley and Archie Moore. April 21st, 1944. 10 rounds, Hollywood, California. Florida, I should say. I always get those two confused. And these two men would meet each other twice. Charley Burley would defeat Archie Moore twice. Archie Moore would wind up becoming a light heavyweight champion when he defeated Joey Maxim in 1952. And Charley Burley was a colored welterweight and a colored middleweight champion. 1938, he would defeat Coco Kid for the colored welterweight championship belt. And he came real close to getting a title shot with Henry Armstrong. Unfortunately for him, he would lose to Fizzy Zivic. They fought each other 3 times. He would win 2, but he would lose 1 to Fizzy Zivic. And he was ranked number 3 in 1938. 1931, he had Seferino Garcia. And ranked number 2 was Fizzy Zivic. Charley Burley was ranked number 3. And Armstrong would defeat Seferino Garcia. And Fizzy Zivic would defeat Charley Burley. So he would get a number 1 ranking spot. But he couldn't fight Armstrong right away. Not until 1940, in New York's Madison Square Garden, October 4th to be exact. And that was the undercard that Ray Robinson would participate in. That was his professional debut. But Charley Burley was something else. I met him personally. And out of all the fighters that I've met, it's hard to talk about Charley Burley because the conversations that him and I had was something else. He only wanted a title shot. He did everything that was asked of him. And he won a title. It was a Pennsylvania title. But he had a brilliant amateur career. And he had a chance to go to the Olympics, but he turned it down. The same way the Harlem Thunderbolt, Harry Smith, turned his down in 1928 because it was somewhat of a boycott, if you will. Black fighters wasn't treated fairly, and he wasn't going to represent his country because of that reason. So he would win the AAU and other titles in the amateur division. And he would become the colored welterweight and the colored middleweight champion. He would defeat Holman Williams for that colored middleweight championship belt. Coco Kid for the colored welterweight championship belt. Great fighter was Charley Burley. He would also defeat a fighter by the name of Jack Chase for the California light heavyweight championship belt. Shout out to Charley Burley and Archie Moore. April 21st, 1944, Lloyd Marshall defeats Jake Lamotta, 10 rounds, Cleveland Arena, in front of 7,805 paying spectators. Both men grossed a gate of $36,608, as Lamotta weighed 158.5 pounds. Marshall weighed 160.25 pounds. The referee, Jackie Davis, had managed to control both men. Marshall's manager paid $5,000 in negotiation to guarantee that his weight would not go past 161 pounds. What was interesting to me, because Jake LaMotta always weighed over 160-pound limit, but he would sometimes come in after he weighed in, close to 170. But Marshall would defeat Jake LaMotta, and that was not an upset, but it was a great win for Lloyd Marshall. Although he began his career in 1936 and Lamotta in 1941. But Marshall needed a break every once in a while. And that was a great break for him. June 7th, 1944. Trenton, New Jersey's Ike Williams defeats Sammy Gott, the Clutch, Shire Park, Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia. Now, 5'9", 20-year-old Ike Williams defeats 5'7.5", 29-year-old Sammy Gott. Williams had a record of 50 wins, 5 losses, 2 draws, 24 knockouts. Sammy Gott had a record of 74 wins, 19 losses, 6 draws, and 12 knockouts. Ike Williams turned professional at the age of 17 after winning 1939 Trenton Games. Between 1940 and 1941, Ike Williams would win 13 out of 18 fights. Ike would defeat 2 of his losses. He would regain 2 of his losses. Now, in 1943, he would make his professional debut in 1940. And he had 34 straight victories and 16 by the knockout route. And he took on Sammy Gott. Sammy Gott was quite a fighter himself. He ended the reign of 62-0, Willie Pep's winning streak. He ended the career of Peter Cerrone, who was the former featherweight champion. And he would be somewhat of a spoiler during the course of his career. Fought Ray Robinson in 1941. Non-title fight. Didn't come in on his proper weight. Defeat Davey Day. Lightweight championship belt. What a fighter was Sammy Gott. So that was a good victory for Ike Williams. Wednesday night, June 7th, 1944. November 3rd, 1944. November 2nd, 1944. Hal Green would twice defeat Rocky Graziano, New York's Madison Square Garden. Now, Graziano's last fight was Bernie Miller. Hal Green's last fight with Ernest Cat Robinson. Now, who was Graziano? His name was Thomas Rocco Barbalo. Born January 1st, 1919, New York's Brooklyn, New York. Died January 22nd, 1990, New York and Brooklyn. Friday, December 22nd, 1944, yes. Hal Green defeats Rocky Graziano. 10 rounds, New York's Madison Square Garden. Green was dropped Rocky Graziano to his knees in the second round. Referee Frank Fulmer counts to 4 as Graziano gets up. And it took a good 9 count to really understand exactly what was happening, because Harold Green, as I explained to you before in the other video, and Graziano would face each other 3 times. Harold Green would defeat him twice, and Graziano would knock him out in their third and final fight. But they would have street fights because they went to the same school. And Howard Green lived in the Brownsville section of Brooklyn. And Graziano was all over the place in Brooklyn. And these two would fight constantly. Real street fights. Now Graziano would defeat Howard Green, third round. Would knock him out 1 minute and 49 seconds. Referee Ruby Goldstein would stop the contest in front of 10,237 spectators. Together they would gross $103,970. Now Graziano was 25 years old. He stood 5 foot 7 inches. He had a 68 1/4 inch reach. He had a record of 35 wins, 4 losses, 5 draws, and 25 knockouts. As for Howard Green, he was 20 years old. He stood 5 foot 9 inches, and he had a record of 39 wins, 5 losses, 2 draws, and 12 knockouts. In the second contest, Graziano was 25 years old. He stood 5 foot 7 inches. He weighed 154 pounds, and he had a 68 1/2 inch reach. Green was 5 foot 9, and he weighed 149 pounds. Third fight, Graziano weighed 153 pounds, and Green weighed 151 pounds. And Green claimed many years later that he was faced to take a dive. That's what he told the reporters. Now, who was Howard Green? He was born October 24th, 1924, Brownsville section of Brooklyn. He died September 4th, 2001. He was 76 years of age. At the time of his death, he was residing in Brownsville, Brooklyn. I met Howard Green. I met Rocky Graziano. My dad already knew Howard Green, so he introduced me to Howard Green. Fought from 1942 to 1953. Had a total bout career of 88 fights. 71 wins, 14 losses, 24 knockouts, and he was stopped 4 times himself. Now, he was in the ring with fighters such as hard-punching Ernie Durando twice, Pierre Langlois, Rocky Castellani, Joey Giardello, Joey Falco, Patty Young, and Marcel Sedan, just to name a few. So Rocky Graziano is to your right, and Howard Green is to your left. What fight series both men would have? January 16th, 1945, Ray Robinson defeats Tommy Bell 10 rounds in Cleveland Arena. And Ray Robinson threw masterful jabs and triple left hooks. The combinations that Ray Robinson would throw in this fight really made people understand how great of a fighter Ray Robinson was going to be. Now, 1 year later, he would face Tommy Bell for the welterweight championship belt that was vacated by Marty Servo. And that would be some fight between those two men. But we'll get to that point in Ray Robinson's career in a couple of more fights. Just wanted to point out Ray Robinson and Tommy Bell. January 16th, 1945, Cleveland Arena. February 19th, 1945, Willie Pep defeats Phil Terranova 15 rounds in New York's Madison Square Garden to defend his featherweight championship crown. Willie Pep was something else. He'll have his wars with Sandy Sadler. Now, Phil Terranova fought from 1941 to 1949. He had a total bout career of 99 fights, 67 wins, 21 losses, and 29 knockouts. He was born September 4th, 1919 in the Bronx, New York. He died March 16th, 2000. He was 80 years of age at the time of his death, and he would reside in the Bronx, New York. I met Phil Terranova as well. Really strong puncher. Good featherweight. We would take on Willie Pep, February 19th, 1945. Friday, March 2nd, 1945. Willie Joyce defeats the lightweight sensation Ike Williams, 12 rounds, New York's Madison Square Garden. Now, Willie Joyce is to your left and Ike Williams is to your right. Willie Joyce is 27 years old. He stood 5 foot 6 inches. He weighed 135 pounds. He had a record of 56 wins, 12 losses, 7 draws, and 13 knockouts. Ike Williams was 21 years old. He stood 5 foot 9 inches, weighed 133.5 pounds, and he had a 68-inch reach. He had a record of 63 wins, 6 losses, 2 draws, and 31 knockouts. Now, who was Willie Joyce? Willie Joyce was born September 2nd, 1917 in Chicago, Illinois. He was also reported as living in Georgia as well. He died December 5th, 1996. He was 79 years of age at the time of his death, and he would reside in Gary, Indiana. I had the pleasure of meeting Willie Joyce as well. He stood 5 foot 6 inches. He was a lightweight, and he was also a welterweight. Had a record of 71 wins, 21 losses, 16 knockouts, 1 no contest. He'd been in the ring with Bob Montgomery and Luther Slugger White, Chalky Wright, Bobby Ruffin, Ray Lunny. He'd also been in the ring with Armstrong and Bo Jack 4 times, Ike Williams, Lou Jenkins, Johnny Bratton twice, Jackie Wilson, Tippy Larkin. Phenomenal fighter was Willie Joyce. That's it for me for this video. We're going to continue with 100 years of World Championship fights. We're going to go all the way up as high as we can go. So thanks for hanging in there with me. Salute to my subscribers and salute to these great fighters. 100 years of World Championship fights. Scrapbook Boxing. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Salute.